I'm glad you're here tonight. This is going to be one of the more important lectures of the prophetic series. So this is a big one. So thanks for being here. Rhonda, give me half of those. I'll help you quick so we can get started. This was Rhonda's makeup quiz. The name went on there fast, but we got you.
You scared me. I thought that was 10%.
Is this you, Dina?
Yeah.
Yeah. Miss Phoebe?
Soda pop.
Miss Ellis, Mr. Marler, Mistress Teaton, Mr. Harvey. You're supposed to bring Rose's homework home to her. Here's her test tube.
Okay.
If you have any Rose's papers, Dina, give them to Connie. She's going to bring them to her.
Okay.
She's fine. Hey, Mrs. C.
Yeah,
How are you?
I'm fine.
I didn't say hi to you or nothing.
Well, I'm bummed.
Yeah, well, now you don't need to be. We talked. Miss Monica Klesson.
Tried to sneak in here, but you caught me.
Nakacha.
More.
Oh, it's a review sheet. Does anybody want their review sheet back that didn't put your name on it? You want that? I'm just going to throw it. It's gone. No name. Nada. Thank you very much. Oh, nice. I've got hardly anything left. This is great. This is fantastic. Yeah. Okay, let's pray and we will get started. Yeah, we're good to go, Tom? Heavenly Father, thank you again just for a time to get together here. God, thank you for blessing us with minds that can learn and remember so we have a better understanding of your word and we can get to know you better. God, that is the goal, to get to know you better. I thank you for each one here tonight. I pray you bless our time right now as we just get into your word. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Now we go towards the prophets. The poetry final test went really, really well. Everybody passed. Only like 2 C's and the rest are A's and B's. So good job. Nice studying. The bell curve is not a bell curve. It's kind of a weird curve, but it's okay. It's a good weird curve, so it's good. Now we're going to get into prophecy. It's made up of 2 words, obviously. Pro plus this part. We're going to say fesi, but we're going to show where it comes from because the 2 meanings help us grasp prophecy, what prophecy is and isn't. Now, think of the word pronoun. That word pro there is used the very same way in the word pronoun. A noun is a person, place, or thing. When you have a pronoun, the word pro means instead of. So this is a Bible. Will you place it on the table, please? I used it instead of the Bible. I used it, it's a pronoun, instead of the noun. So I used a pronoun, I used it. Harvey knew immediately what I meant. The noun, Bible. It, in place of Bible, pronoun. So a pronoun just means instead of or in place of. That's what pro means, in place of. So in place of, that's what pro means here. So pro, in place of. So that's the pro part of prophecy, in place of. Now, the word Fesi or fet and prophet, either one of those, come from a word in the Greek, phemi, P-H-E-M-I. And phemi means literally to speak. So pro in place of, phemi, fesi, fet, to speak. So a prophet speaks in place of. Prophecy is speaking in place of. So we've got to get rid of the American concept of prophecy that says prophecy speaks of the future. It predicts. That's not what prophecy means. It's included in speaking for God, but it can speak of past works of God. It can speak presently of what God is saying now, and it can speak of what God is going to do. So the word prophet or prophecy, to speak in place of. A prophet of God is speaking in place of God. That's how that works. Kind of got that, kind of? That's why we oftentimes will say, remember, we use this a lot, as a prophet he foretells the works of God, and he tells forth the Word of God. So a prophet can do either or both of those. That is a true prophet. Someone who tells forth the Word of God or foretells the works of God. That's what a prophet does. That's what a prophet is. Do we kind of understand prophets now? So as we get into these 17 prophetical books, it's not always about the future. It can be about what's going on right then. Sometimes we'll see it'll even go and give a little bit of a historical background. So that's what we're getting into. We're getting into prophecy. In Exodus chapter 7:1, we have to turn there, but you remember it, where God has called Moses to go to Pharaoh and speak for God to Pharaoh. And Moses said, I don't speak so well. And all, remember all this? Remember God says, here comes Aaron. He's going to be a prophet for you. He is going to speak in place of you. So Moses and Aaron would go to Pharaoh. God would tell Moses what to say, and Aaron was the speaker. Because Moses said, I couldn't speak. God said, you're a good speaker, but Moses or Aaron will be a prophet for you. Okay, so we've got that. The first prophet that we see in Scripture, the office, I should say, the office of prophet, starts Samuel. Samuel is the first person in the Old Testament to initiate or originate the office of prophet. Samuel 19 talks about that in verses 18 to 24 there. He also does something very interesting in 2 Kings. He starts the school of the prophets. And based on this, we remember the life of Samuel. Remember how he was trained up under Eli and he was well educated under the priest Eli. He becomes that first prophet. He starts the school of prophets. And in the school of prophets, all of a sudden, the prophets that show up in the Old Testament, most of them come from this school of prophets. And the school of prophets was not like a seminary. It was very mobile. It moved up and down the promised land. There are different schools of the prophets. But it started with Samuel. He started that school of the prophets. After he left, it continued on. And the prophets that came out of here were very literate. They were very well educated. We're going to see Thursday night, Jonah goes to Nineveh. And he says, in 40 days, the judgment of God is going to come upon this place. How did he know how to speak the Assyrian language? Maybe it was a gift of tongues. Could have been. Many people believe it was. Others believe, no, the school of prophets. Much like when you go to Bible schools today, they will train you in different languages and send you on out. Is it possible, since Assyria was like the major nation of the time, that the school of the prophets were already learning that language? Who knows? But the school of the prophets. Some of the people that we believe came out of here is the main one tonight, Isaiah. Most people believe Isaiah is a product of the school of the prophets. In fact, most of the prophets that we're reading, they believe came out of the school of the prophets. So Samuel is the first one seems to originate the office of the prophets. He started the school of prophets to train up some of the Jewish men in languages, in study, in seeking God. And they become prophets. The school of the prophets. We see it up and down. Most people believe Elisha from the school of the prophets. In fact, he is, it tells us. So, that's what we're going to be looking at over the rest of the course, up and through the month of April. Our last day of class is May 1st. That's graduation. So we finish up prophets next month, and we've done the Old Testament. Can you believe that? Old Testament isn't that hard, is it? Not as hard as you thought. It makes sense. It's just people don't go through it much. But it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to get through. You just got to just read it and do it. Not so bad. Okay, so we got the school of the prophets. Now when we...
Can I ask a-
Yes, of course.
So those guys that were called to be, is it the same way as like you're called to be a pastor, they're called to be a prophet from,
Sometimes. We're going to see that. Are you going to be here Thursday night? We're going to really get into that on Thursday night. Make sure you get it. Because it's going to be about the second chance of Jonah. And we're going to look throughout the Old Testament and see how Abraham got a second chance. Remember, we went to Egypt and then messed up, he got a second chance. We're going to see how David got a second chance. We're going to see Moses got a second chance. God calls somebody, they really mess up, and God calls them again, exactly the same calling. Jonah, arise, go to Nineveh. He goes the other way. He has that whole experience of chapter 2. Chapter 3 starts out, arise, go to Nineveh. Second chance, another calling. So these prophets are called in very much the same way, but not only as a pastor, but as you. Any Christian. We're called. And we're going to be able to relate to the Abraham mistake, the Moses mistake, the David mistake, the Moses mistake, the Jonah mistake, New Testament, the Peter mistake. We're going to see all these mistakes where either we take it in our own hands, we try to do it our own way, we get sidetracked with something else, we don't trust God, we get fearful, all the different things. Jonah tries to run away from God, Peter denies God. We're called, we blow it, and the enemy says, you blew it, you'll never be used. And yet the Bible is full of opportunities that shows, no. God still has that calling on you. Don't let that sidetrack you. Don't let that shelf you. Get back in the battle. God's not looking for perfect people to call. He's looking for people that are willing to do what he's called them to do. So we're going to be looking at that. So not only the prophets, not only the pastors, but Christians in general. So we'll be hitting that really hard on Thursday. So I get that for sure. Okay, good question though. So we look at the Old Testament. As we look at the Old Testament, remember we saw there were 17 history books? Everyone remembers that, right?
Yep.
And they remember how they broke up into 5, the Pentateuch, and 12 history books? That's like old school now. That's easy. You remember that for sure. Then we know there were poetic books in the middle, right? You know there are 5 of those. And then we said there's prophecy, speaking in place of God. Prophecy, I always spell prophecy wrong. Prophesying prophecy. Is it S or C right there? I always get that switched. Like that? Really?
English teacher.
It's a C. Okay. That's why I get it switched. Okay. And then this breaks up the same way. 5 and 12, remember? 5 are called majors, the major prophets. 12 are called minor. So the first 5 we're going to be looking at are the major prophets. They're called major not because they're most important, but because they're long. That's a major prophet. There's only 4 writers of the 5 major prophets: Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. After the Babylonian captivity, Jeremiah is writing during the time of the captivity, just prior to it. When it's done, he looks at Jerusalem destroyed and he just weeps over it. That's why he's called the weeping prophet, remember? and he laments over it. So that 5-chapter book of Jeremiah, after the Babylonians take Judah out, is called Lamentations. It's only 5 chapters, so it's not major, but it's written by Jeremiah, so it's included as one of the major prophets, even though it's just a little addendum to Jeremiah. So Isaiah, Jeremiah, then his little addendum, Lamentations, then Ezekiel, and then Daniel. The 5 major prophets. And then we'll go into the 12 minor prophets. So that's where we're going. Everyone's got that now, right? That's going to be kind of important. So for next week, you might want to be able to list the books from Genesis through Daniel in order, which is not that big a deal. You already know almost all of them already. You got 22 down. We're just adding 5 more, and they're obvious ones. So make sure.
Could you say those again?
Isaiah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Daniel.
No,
I'm trying to do 2 things here. What's happened here?
you broke the eraser.
I did.
Broke it.
Isn't that weird? Okay, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel. If I just push hard, it works. It's all right. But you'll have to take that home and fix that baby. I'll set it here. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel. Okay. Now we get into Isaiah. What Beethoven is to music, what Shakespeare is to literature. In Judaism now, Isaiah is to the prophets. To the Jew, Isaiah is the man. He is the prophet, more so than even Elijah. So to the Jew, Isaiah is the greatest prophet in Israel since Moses. So we're about to embark on Isaiah. And he is a heavy hitter to the Jew. So we want to make sure we have that. Now, Isaiah breaks down, it is so interesting. Remember, the chapters weren't there in the original scroll. That's important to remember. But when they came in, centuries and centuries and centuries, millennia after it was written, and they put these chapters in there, you can still see the hand of God. It just makes it so stinking cool. Because we're talking thousands of years later, some guy said, I'm going to put some chapters in here. He does it, and when we look at it, it is stinking amazing. So we're going to look at Isaiah first off as a whole. It's got 66 chapters, and that is something you want to know about Isaiah. And there's a break in Isaiah. The first 39 chapters, so it'd be chapters 1 through 39, they deal with the judgment on God's people because of disobedience. To the law. That's basically chapters 1 through 39. The judgment of God on disobedience to the law. Emphasized law. So as we go through that, that's what's going on. Then the last 27, chapters 40 through 66, deal not with the law, set it over there, but God's grace. Deals with God's grace and the salvation that grace is going to bring. So, chapters 1 to 39, the judgment because of disobedience to the law. Chapters 40 to 66, God's grace and the salvation that grace brings. When you look at that breakup, does it ring some bells? Anybody know how many books are in the Bible? Any idea how many books are in the Old Testament? 39.
39.
How many books in the New Testament? 27. Old Testament deals with obedience and disobedience to the law. The New Testament deals with God's grace and the salvation that God's grace brings. So because of that, Isaiah today is referred to as a little Bible. the book of Isaiah. Isn't that crazy? This was written so long ago. And yet there's this break in it that is just amazing. And as you read through Isaiah, we did an Isaiah study here about 3 years ago. You can see the chapter breaks are where they should be. This has not been forced. It's like, yeah, there's this turning in chapters 38 and 39 where it kind of wraps up and points to the future, and all of a sudden there's just a whole different flavor in Isaiah pointing to the great. It's the coolest thing. It's the coolest thing. So I want to make sure we know that. These are just some of the things that we want to look at. As we look at these 27 chapters right here, if you took 27 and divided it by 3, anybody got a calculator?
9.
9, okay, good, thanks. Pretty good. The first 9 chapters of the grace section, and then the second 9 chapters of the grace section, and then the third 9 chapters of the grace section, all fit together rather interestingly. I would like, who's got Bible here? If you have a Bible here, someone turn up to the last verse of chapter 48. Phoebe, I see you got your Bible. Do that, please. Isaiah 48, the last verse. Kathy Ellis, if you could turn to the last verse of chapter 57. And Dina, if you could turn to the last couple of verses of chapter 66. Now notice what we're taking, where we're taking these ladies. We're going to the last verse of these first 9 chapters, the last verse of the second 9 chapters, and the last couple of verses of the third 9 chapters. So as you break this into 9, there's a natural break right here. So Phoebe, you had the first one, right? Listen really loudly as she reads, and what is that verse? It's 48 what?
22.
So 48:22. It says what?
There is no peace, says the Lord, for the wicked.
That's how it ends. So he talks about all the hope we have. And if we follow God, he gives these prophecies of tremendous prophecies, tremendous hope. But he says if you don't, there's no peace for the wicked. He does it again in the second section. And what's your verse, Kathy?
21.
And that's 57?
Yep.
57:21. What does that say?
There is no peace, says my God, for the wicked.
There it is. It's only used twice, but there it is. At the end of this section, at the end of this section. Now we come to the end of the third section, end of the book, and it's a whole different ballgame. He just gets fired up, and he just expands it. He amplifies. There's no peace for the wicked. If you can get to that, I hope it's the last verse. We'll find out here as Phoebe reads it. Is it the last verse, Phoebe? The last couple of verses, or is it? I forget.
66:23.
Not Phoebe, I'm sorry. It was Dina. Is that who it was?
23 and 24.
Is that what it is? 23 and 24? Okay, listen to that.
And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all flesh shall come to worship before me, says the Lord. And they shall go forth and look upon the corpses of the men who have transgressed against me. For their worm does not die.
That means there's no peace. The worm was looked at as it's going to be an eternal torment.
And
Okay.
their fire is not quenched.
Oh, that sounds like something that I don't want to be part of. Okay?
They shall be an abhorrence to all the flesh.
An abhorrence to all the flesh. So he just exemplifies there's going to be no peace for the wicked. So we see no peace for the wicked, no peace for the wicked. Really, I'm serious. No peace for the wicked. The worm's not dying, the fire's not being quenched. Your flesh is going to be an abhorrence. So it's like bam, 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 these 3 sections. In the first section, he deals with the supremacy of God. That's those 3 chapters. The second one, he deals with the servant of God. Bam, 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 bam. The servant of God. Any idea who the servant of God might be? Strong look at the Messiah. Strong look at the Messiah. We're going to really get into that a little bit tonight. He has these servant songs, 4 of them, and they just talk about the Messiah big time. And we can go to those servant songs and we can see how we are to be a servant in the body of Christ by emulating the Messiah. So in that whole book of Isaiah, When it comes to the servant songs, we're going to know it's somewhere in those second 9 chapters here, because that emphasizes the servant of God. The last one is the challenge that God lays before his followers, the challenge of God. So in the book of Isaiah, it's these right here that we as Christians are really interested in getting deep into. But these are equally important because there are tremendous and well-known prophecies of the Messiah in these first 39. So this is how the book breaks up. 1 to 39, 40 to 66. And when you read it, as you're reading through it, it's like, ooh, those first 39 are pretty rough. We're just talking a lot about what's going on. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about the history that Isaiah has been written in. And it's rough. It's a rough time period. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, whoosh. And it's great. Because of that, liberals say, obviously, there are 2 different authors here. Obviously. Because it's so... And it's a bummer. I hate it when that happens, because a lot of the seminaries, the liberal seminaries, a lot of liberal churches, and even the more you study in that type of environment, they really push you into here. And I feel so bad, because I wish Jesus would have had a chance to go to seminary, because he didn't know it. He didn't know that. Because Jesus, of all things, he does something that's way crazy. Jesus says, he quotes from this section and that section, and in both of them he says Isaiah said it. There's all kinds of other arguments for it. They call it, the single Isaiah, the Deutero, or the Trito Isaiah. When I went to seminary, I've repented so many times, but I had to study that garbage. And it's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And people come in fired up for Jesus, and they leave so confused. Pastor Chuck told us over and over and over again, never go to seminary until you've been in ministry 5, 6, 8 years. Then go to seminary. Otherwise, you'll come out and you'll lose it. So that was the model that I was trained up in, and that was the model I followed. I'm so thankful for that, because otherwise it really gets you messed up. But Jesus, and we don't need to get any more than that. That's end of discussion. That's it. Jesus quotes both and attributes them both to Jesus, or to both to Isaiah. We're not going to go any further into that. The conservative position, there's one author. End of story. End of story. Now, it's also interesting is some of his prophecies are so exacting that the liberals say, well, there's no way. There is no way he could have wrote that prior to the coming of Jesus. It couldn't have been done. This obviously was written after Jesus came, because the prophecies are so accurate. So it's been manipulated. Anybody know what blows that out of the water? Which scrolls? Have you ever seen them, Sandy? How many times? So you know they're there. You see the scroll. You see it connected. You see there's no sewing in the midst of it. It's just all the way around, and it's dated before the time of Jesus. So the liberals don't talk much about that anymore, because they found a complete scroll of Isaiah. And because of that, in the Museum of the Dead Sea Scrolls, that is the center piece. You go in there, it's humidity controlled, temperature controlled, it's in that glass case. It's the center of the whole museum. That is the thing, because that just shuts up liberalism right now. This whole thing of 2 Isaiahs, and this was written after the coming of the as they called the Christian Messiah. It's baloney. Baloney. Doesn't work that way. It doesn't happen. So at any rate, Isaiah. That's just background to Isaiah. A couple of things we want to look at before that. If you want to see where, I just said that, probably should give you that. Jesus quoted in John 12. Someone look this up, 38 to 40. Who wants to read that? Sandy, you got that? You're turning. John 12, 38 to 40, please. And then Luke 4, 17 to 21. Someone look that up and read that. Are you looking that up, Tom? I can't see you back there. Luke 4, 17 to 21. And Sandy, John 12, 38 to 40. Jesus is going to quote from the first half and the second half of Isaiah and attribute it to Isaiah. I mean, You should never have to get into that discussion. If you have these two verses marked in your Bible, that's the end of it. It's the end of it. So what I would do in my own Bible, I would put John 12:38 to 40, Luke 4:17 to 21 on the first page of the book of Isaiah in my Bible. So if anybody comes up, I could just pop open Isaiah, bam, bam, say, I've seen the Dead Sea Scrolls, but more importantly than that, they just confirmed what Jesus already said and knew. And I have a choice. I can follow a seminarian or I can follow Jesus. End of discussion. John 12:38 to 40. Sandy, nice and loud, please.
That the word of Isaiah the prophet might be fulfilled, which he spoke. Lord, who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Therefore they could not believe, because Isaiah said again, He has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, lest they should see with their eyes, lest they should understand with their hearts in turn, so that I should heal them.
Done. 17 to 21 of Luke 4, Tom.
And he was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovery of the sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. Oh, 21. Then he closed the book, and he gave it back to the attendant, and sat down, and the eyes of all who were in the synagogue were fixed on him.
So we've got from the second half, the first half, both attributing to Isaiah. Done. Done. So we've got that. So we've covered that. Thank you, sweetie. Now, that's that part of Isaiah. Now we want to look at a couple of key chapters in Isaiah. And these are ones that we should just know if we've even had a survey course of Isaiah, because they're like extremely important. The first one is Isaiah chapter 6. Your Bibles, you might want to turn it open to that, Isaiah 6. It is extremely key. It's the calling of Isaiah. In light of what Grace had asked about the call, here's another call. The calling of Isaiah as a prophet. He went to the school of the prophets, but he wasn't a prophet until God called him. Some prophets are called as a prophet, then they go to the school of the prophets, but Isaiah wasn't called until now. And it says here, in the year that King Uzziah died, and you know about King Uzziah, we've talked about him before, a godly king. For most of his life, he decided to take the role of a priest, went into the temple to offer a sacrifice. The priest rushed him on out of there. He'd been a godly priest all of his life, but he got this weird thing that, I can approach God my way now because I'm so godly, And he broke out with leprosy. Spent the rest of his life in isolation and as a king who was a leper. Now he dies. In the year that he died, I saw the Lord, Isaiah writes, sitting on a throne high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. There was a change in leadership. Not to fear, God is still on the throne. So he sees God on the throne. Above it stood the seraphim. Each one had 6 wings. 2 he covered his face, 2 he covered his feet, and 2 he flew. And one cried to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. The posts of the doors were shaken by the voice of him who cried out, and the house was filled with smoke. So Isaiah said, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I'm a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. My eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim, he would be called a seraph, right, because I am is plural. Cherub, cherubim, plural, flew to me, having in his hand a live coal, which he had taken with the tongs from the altar, and he touched my mouth with it, and I said, Behold, this has touched your lips, your iniquity is taken away, your sin is purged. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? Who will go for us? And I said, Here am I, send me. And he said, Go tell this people. Keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, but do not perceive. Sounds familiar, Sandy? That's what you were quoting from, right? I believe that same passage. Make the heart of this people dull and their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their heart, and return and be healed. And he said, Lord, how long? Until the cities are laid waste out in habitation, he goes on. So we look at this. Notice his calling. The calling came of a man who had been forgiven. God said, I have a need. His calling was, I'll go. Isn't that something? Sometimes that's a call. I'll go. That's a call. Interesting. Sometimes I'll just wait unless God calls me. Oftentimes, you've heard it said, it's not the ability, it's the availability. I'll go. That's how you get called. I'll go. In today, how do you get called? Lord, I'm available. That's how you're called. I didn't realize it for years. That's how I was called into ministry. I was sitting on Eubank at the grocery store. Calvary Chapel was starting out a couple years old. I was sitting in the midst of Calvary there. I'd made that my church. And I was there in a midweek service. And I'm just sitting there and I'm listening to Skip teach. And I was teaching a Bible study. And as I listened to him, he was teaching a study that I was teaching. And I just sat quietly there and I looked at all these people getting fed. And I just quietly in my heart said, Lord, I know you've given me that same gift. If you want to use me, I'm available. That's all I said. Not to anybody, just me. And within 3 months, I was sent to Santa Fe. I didn't realize that was a calling. I just knew my pastor asked me to do something. If he asked me to do something, I have never said no to my pastor on something. Ever. Ever. I was taught that in San Francisco. It's the most ridiculous, asinine thing in the world to do. Would you be willing to do that? Well, no. Are you kidding me? So I went. And God has led me that way all of my life that way. I'm up to my eyeballs in studies in Santa Fe. I've never been a pastor before. I'm reading and studying. I'm getting up. My sleep schedule is really stupid up there. I'm just studying all the time. And I get a phone call. Con, I got to take a Greek class over at the seminary. I need a study partner. Will you take Greek with me? I didn't say, well, let me pray about that. So, of course. Thanks for asking. Con, I'm starting school ministry. I need either a church history or a theology teacher. Which one would you like to do? Would you be willing to do one? Sure, I'd be glad to. Can you teach for me? Of course. You get a call. Can you teach over in Moscow in January? I'm there. I need you to go to Bulgaria. Can you go to Bulgaria? I'll do it. You just say yes. It's so frustrating to see people just stagnate because they keep saying no to what God's calling them to do because they say, well, my phone doesn't ring. It's not a call, man. No, it's a call. There's a need. There's a need. Do it. You're one of my heroes, by the way, just so you know. You're what, 74?
7. Thank you.
77? That's what I want to be at 77 right there. I want to be in the front row of a class learning. You have every excuse. I'm 77. I forget about it. Got my hip replaced. I'm just going to chill. I love it. It's awesome. It's awesome. The call of God. So chapter 6 of Isaiah is so stinking important, guys. Come on. There it is. No one better miss chapter 6 of Isaiah. That's the call of Isaiah. Then chapter 7, verse 14. Take a look at that. I know you know that one. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son. Call his name God with us, or Emmanuel. So 7:14, and then 9:1-6. 9:1-6.
Chapter 9.
I'm sorry, I'll write it down. 7:14 and 9:1-6. These are oftentimes used at Christmas time. Notice this in that front half of Isaiah. 9:1-6 says this. This deals with Emmanuel. Nevertheless, the gloom will not be upon her who is distressed. And when at first he lightly esteemed the land of Zebulun, the land of Naphtali. Okay, now you know that. The land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. You got it?
They're up top.
Guess what's there? Nazareth and Capernaum. That's where Jesus lived. Isn't that something? Now you got that in your head. You go, yeah, that's right. That's exactly. Asher, Naphtali, Zebulun. Yeah, that's exactly where it is. So it says in this prophecy, the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, even the order. Zebulun, Nazareth, Naphtali, Capernaum, the Sea of Galilee. Isn't that something? And afterward more heavily oppressed her by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, in Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them the light has shined. You have multiplied the nation, increased its joys. They rejoice before you, according to the joy of the harvest, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil. For you've broken the yoke of the burden, the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, as in the day of Midian. For every warrior sandal from the noisy battle, garments rolled in blood will be used for burning and fuel of fire. There will be no more battle. For unto us a child is born. Unto us a son is given. The government will be upon his shoulders. That means the government will be rest on him. His name will be called, these 4 terms, Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, 5 terms, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. There's another way of knowing that the Messiah is God. He's going to be called Mighty God, this son that is given. He's going to be called Mighty God. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end upon the throne of David. There's that throne of David, and his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice from that time forward, even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. So, bam. Kind of important here. This deals with the birth of the Messiah. This deals with the call of Isaiah. Now, we're going to get into a little bit here, quite a little bit, Assyria tonight. We're going to spend a lot of time on Assyria tonight. But Assyria is portrayed in prophecy. 7:42, we're good. Okay, I'll make sure I got my right time here. Whew. Got to talk a little faster. Okay, so
What did you call chapters 9, 1 to 6?
that's the birth of the Messiah. The birth of the Messiah. Now we get into the next key chapter. Assyria in the prophecy is portrayed as mighty trees because they're a strong nation. And the trees in prophecy speak of strength. The trees, strong. Now we go to Isaiah 11, another key chapter. And it says here, there's going to come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse. Not from the tree, but from a little branch. So it's going to speak not of strength, but of humility coming from the bloodline of Jesse. Remember whose son Jesse had? What the name of the son of Jesse was David. That's David's dad. So it says here, there shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse. A branch will grow out of his root, not a tree. The Spirit of the Lord is going to rest upon this branch. The Spirit of wisdom and understanding. The Spirit of counsel and might. The Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be, and it goes on and on and on. But we see this Messiah is the branch. So we look at that. We see a key chapter, chapter 11. It shows Messiah in his humility. So I'll just go like this, and we'll just call it humility of the Messiah. And from that we see he comes from the line of David. Here we see the birth of the Messiah. Here we see the call of Isaiah. So you see some of the key chapters we're looking at, yes? The other ones, there's 4 servant songs, and I don't want to have you know all of them. I don't think that's necessary. But we'll just say 42, and I'm going to go like this, 253. So up through 53. I was going to have you just know all of them, but I don't think it's necessary. I'm just going to have you know 2 of them. But no, there are 4 within that range. There are 4 servant songs. But we're going to just know 2 of them for this class. The other ones you'll find, that's fine. But the 2 I want you to know are easy enough. 42, the first one. And it's just verses 1 to 7. And that's the servant song. Let's take a look at that. This is one, if you've been in any of my classes on leadership, this is where we always go. Because we really want to stress servant leadership. And this is where we find... Not bad. Oh, that's you. That's this one. Okay. Recording.
In class, I'll call you back. Am I okay? Of course I'm okay in your class.
It's all good. It's good to be checked on. Chapter 42, verse 1. Notice what it says. Chapter 42, verse 1. Wow. Behold, my servant, whom I uphold. He's talking about Messiah, but we can learn how to be a servant from this text. The first is we're held by God. We're supported by God. We rely on him. My elect one, in whom my soul delights. We delight in the Lord. A true servant of God delights in the Lord. He is dependent on the Lord. I have put my spirit upon him. A true servant of God is going to have received the baptism of the Holy Spirit. Otherwise, you're going to get burned out. If you are doing this in the flesh, if you're serving the Lord in your flesh, you're going to get tired. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to be short. You're going to be weird. You can always tell someone who's doing it in their flesh, really gifted. Gifted speaker, gifted servant, gifted in organization, whatever. Drama all the time. Because they're just drama. I would much rather have someone who is not quite as gifted in an area, but who is serving in the power of the Spirit, than someone very gifted in an area in their own strength. It'll just be way better. So he'll bring justice to the Gentiles. He will not cry out nor raise his voice. Oh, okay. Nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. So he's not going to be short-fused, and he's not going to be a braggart. A bruised reed he will not break. A bruised reed, one that is bent over, he will not snap it off. When someone's hurting, he doesn't snap it off and throw them away. He ministers to them, helps the hurting. A smoking flax he will not quench. That was their candle, remember. And if it's almost out, he would not, well, that used to burn bright, but put it out. No, he'll. So we use that today. You find someone who used to walk with the Lord and they're just, it's gone. Bless you, bless you, bless you, bless you again. But you will not just blow it out or quench it. You will fan it and bring it back to light again. So it's a heart of a true servant. He will not fail nor be discouraged. Man, if I need to be encouraged, I cannot be a pastor. Do you have any idea, kind of now, I told you when we went in, baby, get ready. Pastors have very few friends. They have a lot of people there. They pastor. They have very few friends. And that's all right. That's part of the call. And pastors, they get a lot of complaints about all kinds of things. I have people that don't like the fact that I have a shaved head. I have people that don't like the fact that I have an earring in my ear. I've had people, I wore contacts for a while. You look really ugly without your glasses. Who says that to people? Who says that to people? But if you're a pastor, they feel that, you're my pastor, I own you a little bit, and I don't like the way you're dressing. In Santa Fe, I had people complain that I wore open-toed sandals because the lady had a foot fetish. And she says, you really caused me to stumble by showing your toes. So I just told my board to deal with her, and they great wisdom. They said, we understand, sit in the back. She was a front row sitter. Well, don't sit in the front if that's bothering you. For crying out loud, get out of the donut shop. Come on. But, people say stuff. It's just weird. Sometimes I get up before 8 o'clock in the morning to study. I do that sometimes. And when I do that, I have people complain about that. Well, you shouldn't do that because you're going to be tired and it's not good for your health. Other people say, well, you don't study enough. You study too much. You're not spending enough time with your wife. You're spending too much time with your wife. All I can say to all that is, I don't really care what you think. I don't care. I just don't care. I used to care. I don't care anymore. I don't care. You just take care of your family. I'll take care of mine. We'll be fine. I'm going to do what God's calling me to do, and that's that. But I cannot live for the encouragement of an elder, a man coming, my wife. If I'm living for encouragement from approval from that, I got to step down. I want God's approval. That's it. And I don't care if your toe gets stepped on sometime. If the Bible says you shouldn't have a goatee, Don, I'm going to teach you shouldn't have a goatee. I'll be shaved probably before I come, so I'll have a heads up. But that's just what it is. That's just what it is. And I don't care if it's an elder or not. If the word says it, that's what it is. Sorry. That's what it is. Deal with it. So you cannot go in to be a servant if you prepare. That's not a word. If you continuously need encouragement. It's good, okay, you need encouragement, but you cannot be a servant in the body of Christ if you get discouraged every time I do something and I don't thank you or you don't thank me. If that's enough to take me out, then I got to find another area. He will not fail nor be discouraged till he has established justice in the earth, and the coastlands will wait for his law. So we see here one of the servants' songs in Isaiah. So this is just we'll say the traits of a servant. But the big one, guys, the big one is 52. This is it, 52:13 to 53:12. Now, however your mind works, you want to know this. However you can remember this, this is probably the most important passage in the entire book of Isaiah for a Christian. So make certain you know this. I don't care whatever you do with numbers, memorize that. Now, you know what this is. This is the one that's the suffering servant, we'll call it. Way, way, way important. The New Testament quotes this passage more than any other passage in Isaiah, and Isaiah is quoted in the New Testament more than any book other than the Psalms. So Isaiah is quoted a lot, and Isaiah 52:13 to 53:12 is quoted the most in the Gospels without a doubt. Well, in the New Testament, the Gospels specifically. But the New Testament shows that this servant right here is Jesus. That's what it shows. It goes into this text and it grabs different passages and shows that that's Jesus. I think the easiest way for us to do is just go to Isaiah 52:53 now, and I'll just tell you where it's quoted from in the New Testament. You can always look it up if you want to. You don't have to know this, but just so you can see it. In 53:4, it says, surely the suffering servant, now this is written by Isaiah before Jesus by a lot. We're talking 600 years before Jesus. Our country isn't even 600 years old. Our country's 200 years old. 600 years. Isaiah writes this through the power of the Spirit. He says, surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. Matthew 8:17 attributes that to Jesus. Isaiah 53:12 says this, therefore I'll divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul into death. He was numbered with the transgressors. He bore the sin of many and made intercessions for the transgressors. Luke 22:37 says that's Jesus. Isaiah 53:1. Who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he shall, you know what? Let's go to John 12:38. I hit a typo on that. John 12:38. Nope, I didn't. That's what it is. That is what it is. So it is Isaiah 53:1. And in 12:37 it says, but although he had done so many signs before them, they did not believe in him, that the word of Isaiah the prophet might be fulfilled. So here's what Isaiah says. So now we see in John, he believes that Isaiah wrote that last half as well. Not only Jesus, there's John saying it. Which he spoke, Lord, who has believed our report? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? So, Isaiah 53:1, John 12:38. We can go on more and more, we won't. But in 1 Peter, Isaiah 53:4 and 5 is quoted. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. By his stripes we are healed. Interesting, the word healed there. It is sozo in the Septuagint, which is salvation. So it literally says, by his stripes we are saved. It means healed spiritually. So when you're praying for the sick, don't quote this. That's a Pentecostal charismatic not knowing the original language phrase. Don't use that. You're being not scriptural. I'm not saying that Jesus didn't die to heal people. I'm saying that Jesus died to heal people spiritually.
What was that verse in the New Testament?
But by his stripes you're healed? 1 Peter 2, 21 to 25. It's right in there. So be careful with that. And I know if you have a charismatic background, I just stepped on your toe big time. I'm sorry, but like I said, I don't really care. I'd rather have you be right than not be offended for a minute. So by his stripes, we are healed spiritually. Notice even the context. I mean, look at it. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace with God was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. It's not talking about physical illness. It's talking about salvation. And the word itself means spiritually healed. So that's that. Then it goes on. Where else do we go? Verse 9 of 53. And they made his grave with the wicked. Well, verse 11 and 12. That's all in 1 Peter 21 to 25. 11 and 12. See the laborer's soul and be satisfied. By his knowledge my righteous servant shall be justified many, for he'll bear their iniquities. I'll divide him portion with the great. He'll divide the spoil with the strong. He pour out his soul. He is numbered with the transgressors. So all this pops up. Now remember those of you that were in New Testament survey class? There's not many of you New Testament people in here, are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 New Testament folks. But you might remember Mark. We had the pivotal verse, chapter 10 of Mark, verse 42. Close. 45. Man, that was right there. 10:45. But in Mark 10, let's take a look at that, because Mark 10:25 even hits this. Not a quote, but the principle. But it's the pivotal verse in the Gospel of Mark. And in 10:45 it says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve." And remember, up until 10:45, the Gospel of Mark deals with Jesus serving. And then from this point on, and to give his life a ransom for many. And at that point, it goes from Jesus being a servant to Jesus being a sacrifice. That's that pivotal verse right there. Well, that is based right here on Isaiah 53, 11 and 12, as we just read. So it's just some interesting stuff. If we take a look at 53:7, the last one. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, he opened not his mouth. John 1:29, behold, the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world. So we just see Isaiah 52, 53, just, man, all over the place. They keep pointing back to this passage. This suffering servant is Jesus. This is a prophecy of the crucifixion, the life of Messiah, and Jesus fulfilled it to the letter. So these are 2 of the 4 servant songs. So these are the key chapters out of the 66 that we want to kind of remember. Chapter 6, the call of Isaiah. Chapter 7 and 9, the birth of Messiah. 11, the humility of Messiah, branch. 42 to 53, the 4 servant songs, specifically 42 and 53, the traits of a servant and the suffering servant. So it's not so bad. You don't have to worry about I put the verses on there, but if you get the chapters, that's all we're looking for. If you find a chapter, you can find the verses. Kind of makes sense? All right. That wasn't so bad. We're done. Now, a little bit of background. Whenever you're reading the prophets, it's imperative. Imperative. That means essential. It's a command. You've got to do this or you're going to get messed up. You've got to know the historical setting in which they're writing. Otherwise, the prophecy makes no sense. So with Isaiah, it's important we know what's going on at the time of Isaiah. I'm going to save you some background reading to tell you a story, but you might want to grab key components of this story, because I can promise you you're going to want to know it. I can promise you that.
This is background of what?
Background of the book of Isaiah. What was going on politically, historically, geographically during that time. The first guys we want to talk about are the Assyrians. Now, we talk about the Assyrians. In the last 10 minutes, I'm going to hand out some maps. I'm going to draw a map on the board, and then I'll hand out a map to you. A couple of maps, actually. But the Assyrians were now coming up to their zenith, to their peak. Remember the Assyrians. They were the wicked of the wicked. They were the worst of the worst. That's where Jonah was sent to go to. Remember, he's supposed to go to the Assyrians, to Nineveh, the capital. Like, oh, man. Well, they are coming to their power again. They kind of lost a little bit, and now they're coming back strong. Remember in our study in Amos, remember it was during Amos's time that Assyria had been battling Syria, and they got a little bit weaker, and the Syrian border kind of got weak, so Israel bumped up to the north, and we put Tyre in Israel at that time just as a way to remember that. Well, now, here, the Assyrians are getting strong again, and they're getting real strong. So this has taken place at that time. And it says here that the Assyrians are bloodthirsty, they are fierce, they delight in cruelty. They delight in it. They are the terror of their age. Enemies who would capitulate to them, who would just say, okay, we give up, no problem, we'll take you. So, Donna, our eyes met again. So you're an Assyrian, you're coming into me, and Kai and I live over up on Montgomery in Eubank. We're just making it real small. And you'd come in and say, look, we're taking you out one way or another. You can make me bring my whole army up here, we'll get you out of here. Or you can just give up. I go, babe, we need to give up. So you take us and you move us to Bernalillo. We go to Bernalillo, you get some folks from Los Lunas, do the same to them, you take them, they move them up to our place. That's what you would do so they would not have this local desire, we're going to go up against you because we're in a new place now. We're new. That's how they did it. But if I said, no, Don, this is my place. Bring it. Then you brought it. And you would go to the leaders of the nations that resisted you, and you would gleefully torture them to death. Weird ways. Those are the ones that they would bury in the sand up to their neck. Just their heads are there, and then they'd play a form of polo with their swords. Or they would take honey and smear it over my head, and then just let the wild animals come and eat my flesh alive. Just let them eat me. Or they would take and they would skin me alive, and then just turn me out into the desert with no skin, knowing the infection. I'd last less than a day. Die horrible deaths. These were the Assyrians. But now if you did that to me, and then you go to Tom and say, Tom, you got to move. And Tom knows what you did to me. Guess what Tom's going to do? He's going to move. He's not going to go up against that. Are you kidding me? You're the strongest country in the world at that time. Yes, sir, I'm out. Now that's important to get that picture as we look at Isaiah, because that's what's going on. And we're going to see in the map how close they are to Israel. Israel is a small little dinky country right in the midst of all this stuff going on. And it's like, oh my goodness. Now, in 722 BC, Israel, the northern 10 countries, are taken into captivity. Assyrian. Doesn't mean they necessarily went to Assyria. We just know they were no longer in Israel. But the scary part is Israel resisted them before they came and got them. So you can only imagine what happened to the leaders. They took out 2/3 of the population of Israel, transplanted them, brought other people in. That was 722 BC. Now, Isaiah is alive when that happens. He starts to prophesy to the nation of Judah. But it's interesting. He tells them, don't be afraid of Assyria. God's got us. Trust God. but we're going down. But it's not going to be the Assyrians. It's going to be a country that's not quite big yet. Babylon's taking us out. We're going down to Babylon. And at the time, it would be like someone coming to the state. Don't worry about Russia. Don't worry about the terrorism that we're facing now. You want to worry about Morocco. It's like, what? Morocco? What? Babylon? Are you serious? Babylon? Have you seen Assyria lately? It's crazy. So that's going to show up in Isaiah. He's going to point to Babylon. Now, let's take a quick look at the significance of this. At the time that Isaiah is just barely coming along, Assyria gets a new king. And this is a guy you're going to want to know. His name is Tiglath.
Is this at 7:22, same time?
Before. This is when they go out. I'm going back just to set the stage when this happened. So this is about I don't even know the date, but probably about 750, somewhere in there.
Tiglath was 750.
About that. And that's put just kind of about. Tiglath, he has a hyphenated name. His mom kept her maiden name, I guess. I don't know. Tiglath-Pileser. He's the guy. So he comes on. He's a great statesman and a great general for the Assyrians. The Assyrians were weakened by their battle with Syria, remember? Well, now Tiglath-Pileser comes along, and he starts a whole new era. This man is going to make Assyria great again. And he's going for it. He is going for it. The first 3 years, he focuses to the east of Assyria. He subdues the Medes and the Scythians. He puts them under and just wipes them out. Down here in Israel, in Samaria, there's a guy named Menahem. He's the king, and he's just watching that going, oh, this Tiglath-Pileser is a crazy dude, man. He is strong. This isn't good. This is not good. We're going to have to figure out something. We got to do something. I know what I'm going to do. I am going to buy him off. So he goes to Tiglath-Pileser and he says, I'll pay you whatever you want. Just leave us alone. Tiglath-Pileser says, here's the number. I don't know the number. It doesn't say the number. We just know it's a bunch. Where does a ruler go to get tribute, to pay for protection? Taxes. So, old Menahem, he just raises taxes big time. The people are not happy with that at all. What is wrong with you? You're giving it to him? Are you serious? So they have a military man, and he's a serious military man. His name is Pekah. He's the general of Israel. And what Pekah does is he's like the leading military man. The people are saying, Pekah, you got to do something. Menahem's giving all our money to Tiglath-Pileser. We're just making him stronger. So they do the normal thing. They have a coup and they kill Menahem. And Pekah becomes the new king. So now Pekah's got to do something. He knows he can't raise taxes. He can't pay off these guys. What's he going to do? I'm going to go to Assyria's major enemy, Syria, right next door to us. And I'm going to go to Syria. And I'm going to say, Syria, look, if we join forces, we could stop him right now. And not only that, my brother down in Judah, his name is Ahaz at this time. King Ahaz of Judah now. Don't think Jezebel Ahaz, but Ahaz in Judah. What I'm going to do with him is I'll get him to join us, and we'll have 3 nations. And we can stop it right now. It won't cost us near the money, and we'll put an end to this thing. We'll take it over. You can imagine. So that's what he decides to do. Well, Pekah and Rezin. Rezin is the king of Syria. And I said this because if you get into the book of Isaiah, these guys are talked about a lot. They form this alliance. The new king of Israel, he's a military guy, and the king of Syria. Now, Syria had just gotten beat by Assyria, so now they've got some more help. Let's do it again. Let's take these guys, So they go down to Jerusalem to talk to Ahaz, the king of Judah. This is where Isaiah is set right here. Here we go. So they come to Ahaz and they say, Ahaz, we're going up against Tiglath-Pileser. Ahaz has one phrase. Ain't nobody got time for that. There's not a chance in the world I'm putting my people up against this dude. Do you know who this is? You got to be kidding me. Well, they're not happy because they're out on a limb and they're counting on them. So you know what they do? We're going to take you out. We're going to kill you. And we'll take whatever we can get from you. We'll put you guys into our army. We're getting you one way or another. This is known as remember Israel, the main nation, the strongest tribe, I should say, of Israel. Do you remember the strongest tribe of the northern 10 tribes? Anybody remember that? It was Ephraim. Remember we talked about Ephraim of Joseph, the firstborn of Joseph, and Joshua comes from Ephraim and all that. So they call this war right here the Ephraimite, that's what it was. It was the Syro-Ephraimite War. And that just means these two came and attacked us. So the Jews in Judah called it the Syro-Ephraimite War.
Where was Ahaz?
Ahaz in Jerusalem.
Jerusalem.
He's the king of Judah. But he's young, he's inexperienced, he doesn't know how to rule, he's kind of flying by the seat of his pants. If there was I won't say it. Okay, so there it is. And this just ends in nothing, stalemate.
What's that, King R-E-Z-I?
R-E-Z-I-N, Rezin. And this guy is in Judah.
He's in Syria.
He's in Syria, and this guy's in Judah. So this ends in just a stalemate. So what this young guy does, he says, I know what I'm going to do because these guys are being mean. I'm going to go to Tiglath-Pileser. I'm going to have him come down and be my big brother. Isaiah is going, hold the phone, Ahaz. That is a bad idea. You never bring the cat in to keep peace among the canaries. What's the matter with you? That's not going to work. That's not going to work. Ahaz says, oh, I'm doing it. I am so doing this. So he goes to Tiglath-Pileser and he says, I'll pay you a bunch of money. Will you come down and take care of me? Tiglath-Pileser just starts licking his lips. I'll be glad to. You bet. Got this.
Who did that? Ahaz?
Ahaz goes up here.
Okay.
These guys come on in, and they start taking over a lot of the cities in Judah now. And they're just taking over the cities in Judah. It's not good. It's not good. So that happens as they're coming on in. They put him under tribute. You got to pay. All these things you got to pay. And he's saying, we're doing it. Pay. We're doing it. We're good to go. He dies. His young son comes to power. The most famous of the kings, probably, other than David and Solomon. His son, young guy. Can you imagine? Talk about getting a sandwich you don't want to eat. His name's Hezekiah. So Hezekiah comes to power. So now we got Hezekiah inheriting this. And Isaiah, we don't know how, but Isaiah has access to these kings. Some say that he possibly is from an influential family. Maybe the school of the prophet. We don't know. We just know Isaiah can talk to these kings. He just goes, it's like going in talking to President Obama. Now we got President Trump. He just goes in and talks to President Trump. He has access here. So he goes to Hezekiah, and Hezekiah says, it's time for us to get back to God. So he Ahaz does something really foolish. I've got to put that in because it's crazy. Before he dies, Tiglath-Pileser calls him up to Damascus in Syria because now he's taken over Syria. And he calls him up there and he says, Ahaz, come on up. Ahaz gets all fired up. I'm going up to see Tiglath-Pileser. Up he goes. And he sees this altar of this demonic god. And he goes, wow, that's who they worship. That's pretty cool. So he calls the architects up and look at that altar. I want one of those in Jerusalem. And he takes that altar and he puts it in the Temple Mount. He moves all the worship of Judaism out and he puts this false altar there. And he starts to worship that god, and that god was a conglomerate of gods. Part of it was abortion. So you have your kids pass through the fire. So they bring that into there. He dies. Hezekiah comes on the throne. He goes, okay, this stops, and this stops now. He gets rid of the altar, gets rid of all the junk. He says, we haven't celebrated Passover for years. We need Passover going on. Now this takes place. These guys are in trouble already up here. Those that are still around, he says, Israel, come on down to Jerusalem. Let's just celebrate Passover. Let's just start worshiping God again. Hezekiah has major religious reform. It's amazing what's going on in there. They're starting to worship God. Tiglath-Pileser is dead. He dies. There's a series. You don't have to worry about Sargon. There's all these Sargon first, Sargon second. Don't worry about them. They go through there's just a lot of political upheaval. When the dust settles, a guy by the name of Sennacherib comes to power. That guy you want to know. So we're going to want to know two guys of Assyria. Tiglath-Pileser, good general, statesman. He brings Assyria up stronger than ever. They start taking out all this stuff, but now there's political turmoil, and now all of a sudden, here comes Sennacherib. He's the next guy. Sennacherib, it's Sennacherib. That's how you can remember it. Sennacherib. And Sennacherib,
Who did he replace?
don't have to worry about that. He's just in a line of other leaders in Assyria. Eventually, there's a bunch of upheaval. Different kings. But then all of a sudden, Sennacherib,
But he was in Syria.
Assyria.
Okay.
Assyria is the big, powerful country. So Sennacherib comes to power, and he's looking down there at Jerusalem. And Jerusalem, they stopped paying tribute. Hezekiah went to Egypt and said, will you be my big brother? And he said, sure, we'll do that for you. So Sennacherib says, I'm coming on in. So Sennacherib comes into Judah and starts just destroying places. Hezekiah, rightfully so, freaks out. And Isaiah comes back in. Don't freak out. Trust God on this. God's got this. Let's just trust God. We've had this religious reform. Let's trust God. It's in the book of Isaiah. It's interesting reading in Isaiah. Interesting reading. So Sennacherib sees that Jerusalem is starting to not respond. He sends Rabshakeh. I'm spelling this wrong, but we'll just say it like this. He sends the Rabshakeh down there, and he sends the Rabshakeh. He's like a general, and he goes down to Jerusalem, and he goes to outside the city. Remember, and they send a couple people out to talk with him. And he says, Sennacherib's on the throne. You've seen what God has done with Assyria. God told us we're supposed to take you out if you don't give in. And you know we're going to do to you. If you resist us, you know what's going to happen to you. We're going to be hard on you. Just come with us now. We'll take you out. Calm yourself. And then he starts speaking in Hebrew. The Rabshakeh does. And all the people of Jerusalem, they're on the wall listening out there. And they say, hey, don't be speaking in Hebrew. You'll freak out the people. He starts yelling in Hebrew to the guys on the wall. Don't listen to your king. Why should you eat your waste and drink your urine before we take you out? Give up now. We'll move you over to Bernalillo and life will be fine, basically. So that's the scene right there. Hezekiah, oh man, Isaiah stands there. No, let's trust God. God's got us. They're not going to take us out. God has shown me. Babylon's taking us out, not now, later. They're not going to do it. Let's trust God. Hezekiah looks around the city of Jerusalem. Turn to 2 Kings 19. Look at this. This is crazy, guys. Now put yourself in Hezekiah's shoes. The people's well-being are on your head. If you give up, they just take everything, but you're alive. The families go out. You're okay. If you say no, if they get in, they're going to torture you to death. Many of the leaders will be tortured to death. The women will be sold into slavery. Who knows what will happen? The families will be separated. And you got the prophet of God saying, let's just trust God on this. It's like, oh man, trust God on this. Can you imagine? Chapter 19. Where do we go? Let's just go. You can read it for yourself. That's where you're going to find it. 18 and 19. If you want some good reading, read it. But take a look at verse 35. This is after. I just told you the story. And it came to pass on a certain night that the angel of the Lord went out and killed in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. These are the big boys. These are the mean ones. One angel goes out and takes out 185 Assyrians. Seriously? When the people rose early in the morning, there were the corpses. All dead. I love that phrase. It's my favorite verse in, I think, all the Old Testament. Every corpse was dead. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, he departed, he went away, returned home. And he remained at his place in Nineveh. And it came to pass, and you can read it, what happens, he gets killed. And he just disappears. He's gone. That's the end of that. And Assyria never really comes back to power much after that. Now, can you only imagine how Isaiah's feeling? Because, he's saying, you got to trust God on this. But I wonder, I believe when he went to bed that night, he was saying, I'm trusting God on this. But the enemy was right there in his ear. Really? I'm trusting God. God told me. Can you imagine when they came out and they said, these guys are all dead. This is fantastic. They're all dead. Isaiah, well, yeah. Of course they are. We trusted God. I love that verse. It's fantastic. You also see it in Isaiah 38 and 39 if you want to read it. That's how the last part of the book ends, with that same storyline told from Isaiah's perspective. But it's some pretty cool stuff. Well, I went off my notes here. Let's see. Yeah, that's where I ended. So I put at the end of my notes, but God. They're freaking out, and I just put but God there in chapter 19. But God. It's one of those but God moments. We're surrounded by 185,000 Assyrians. Life is bad. They're coming in after us. They come in after everybody. They never lose, but God. So it's just kind of cool. Isaiah is written during that time. So that's the first 39 chapters of Isaiah about that storyline. So now when you read Isaiah and you see what he's saying to Hezekiah, what he's saying about, you're gonna hear in Isaiah about Pekah and Rezin. That's those guys coming down here. That's this war. Oh, yeah. And then he said, don't go up here. You're going to see all that in the book of Isaiah. That's what it tells you about. Then we get to chapter 40, and it shifts. Hezekiah. All of a sudden, Isaiah goes to Hezekiah, and he says, chapter 20, I think it is. I could be wrong in the chapter, never mind. But he says, Hezekiah, the Lord just told me you're going to die. Get your house in order, man. You're going down. Hezekiah's going, I'm too young to die. Are you kidding me? I'm way young. Hezekiah goes into his room and he cries out to God. God, I don't want to die yet. And Isaiah says, the Lord heard your voice. You got 15 more years, man. During those 15 years, Isaiah completely screwed up everything good he ever did. Hezekiah. Thank you. Hezekiah screwed up everything that he had done up to that point. He had done so well here. I mean, reform, trusting God, watching God deliver. I mean, hello. 15 more years, he has a little boy. His boy's name is Manasseh during those 15 years. The worst of the kings to rule in Judah. He's the one that brings in, legalizes the worship of Molech, of having your unwanted kids thrown into the fire. He does that down in the valley of the sons of Hinnom. That's Manasseh. Manasseh just takes Israel into idolatry like no other king, and Judah like no other king. Also during that time, he recovers now. He's sick to death. Everyone knows, hey, the king of Judah, old Hezekiah, is dying. Whoa, he's made it. He's healed. So the Babylonians, Sennacherib's dead. The Babylonians are starting to come on the scene. They send an envoy down. Congratulations, Hezekiah. We heard about how you were almost dead and you made it and you're alive. We just want to congratulate you. We just want to be friends with you and all. Hezekiah says, yeah, it was great, man. I thought I was going to be dead for sure. I cried out to my God and he delivered me and I'm alive. We got a great God. Let me show you what God has done. And he opens up their vaults. He says, look at this. Look at the temple. Look at the temple. Gold altars, gold everything. Millions and millions and millions of shekels worth. The Babylonians, wow, God's blessed you. That's good. They go home, they keep track of that. Man, Jerusalem's loaded. That's not a poor country down there. That's a big old country. That's a lot of money down there. And that's the hook that draws the Babylonians in against Jerusalem. So those 15 years, Manasseh's born, and he shows Babylonians everything. So that's how Hezekiah ends. So at any rate, then, we go from there. But at any rate, just so you kind of know the players a little bit. Uzziah dies, Ahaz follows, Hezekiah, and Manasseh. Those are the kings during Isaiah's life. Okay, kind of got him there? See how that works? So, that's Isaiah. Isaiah is a tremendous prophet. You can see how God used him. I mean, he stood up against,
What was his son's name?
which one?
Hezekiah?
Hezekiah's son was Manasseh.
Manasseh. And what is that one you just erased there?
Which one? Sennacherib. Rabshakeh. He was a general for Tiglath-Pileser. So he was a general that came down and tried to roughshod over
Yeah.
Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Manasseh.
Got it? Are we good on that? We kind of know where we're going, right? Yeah.
What's the time frame that Isaiah is prophesying?
Oh, I would say, I don't have it, it's in the book, but it's 6 and 700 BCs. So 700 BC to 680 maybe. So probably 740 to 680. I'm guessing about that. It's close. Somewhere in there. So he's right in there. Now, all that, just to give you a background for Isaiah, when you read the book, it's going to make a lot of sense now because you understand what's going on. Now we've got some maps I want to go over with you and a homework assignment. It's going to take us about another 10 minutes. I apologize. I didn't talk fast enough, but it'll be quick. This part of the map is really going to be important. We're going to put the Persian Gulf over here. Okay, the water will be in blue. There's the Persian Gulf, right? Now, my rivers aren't exact. I just want you to know kind of. So, well, that river doesn't really dump into the Persian Gulf. Whatever. I don't care. But at any rate, we've got a river that goes through here. We have another river that kind of comes like this. This is the Tigris River. This is the Euphrates River. The Tigris River has its source in a mountain right here. And that mountain is Mount Ararat. Mount Ararat. That's where the ark lands, Mount Ararat. So that is the Tigris River, the Euphrates River. If you read Genesis chapters 2 and 3, you find that the Garden of Eden is somewhere in here because it talks about the Tigris and the Euphrates River. So it's just kind of an interesting area right in there, pre-flood. So we've got these two rivers here. And of course, we have way over here, we have the coastline of modern-day Turkey, modern-day Lebanon, Phoenicia, Israel. There's Haifa. Mount Carmel would be here. And then it goes on down over into Egypt, right? This would be the Sea of Galilee, the Dead Sea, something like that. So you just kind of, this is too big. Something like that. So you can kind of see in perspective, Israel is really small here. And this is not done right. Sorry, guys. Sea of Galilee, Dead Sea. Okay. We have the Red Sea. We have two rabbit ears of the Red Sea. They kind of go like this and like this, and then the Red Sea goes on out. And the Mediterranean Sea, of course. So those are the bodies of water that we want to kind of get in perspective a little bit. There are many more, but these are the ones we need to know. Now, when we're looking at this, there are certain cities we need to know. We're going to have Tyre. Going to have Sidon. That makes sense, those two, right?
Yep.
No problem there. Just a little north of Tyre, as you know, over in here is Damascus, right? Now, just so you get a perspective on this, if we go all the way over, straight across my river, I am so sorry. Look what I did. Ugh. I hate it when I do that. All the way over, even with Damascus, right here, sits Babylon. So do you see, it's the same latitude. Tyre, Damascus, Babylon are all about the same. There's a little town over here. It was a big city back in the days in Genesis called Ur. Ur of the Chaldees, that's where Abraham was from. That's where Abram's from, over there. There's Ur. So you kind of see how that works?
Where
Right above the Persian Gulf. You are Ur. Uh-huh.
I was thinking that was Joe, but that was us.
Uz, that was Uz. This is Ur. And then above Babylon, on the Tigris, we come to Asher. In the Table of Nations in Genesis 10, I believe it is. 10. Asher and Babylon. Nimrod settles in Babylon, builds Tower of Babel and all. After the flood and everything, it appears that Asher, this is after the flood, then it appears that Asher was also a name of one of Shem's kids. And he builds this. And then it appears from that Table of Nations that Nimrod goes up and builds a city up here known as Nineveh.
Same Nineveh?
Same Nineveh. So Asher is the capital of Assyria for a long time. But then as we go forward, this great city, the city of Nineveh, becomes the capital. This is the one that Jonah was sent to. That's this Nineveh. So you can kind of see,
On the map you're giving us?
kind of. There's two maps. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But what I want you to do, I want to make sure you get this. Some of it's on the map, but not all of it. So we've kind of got that. Do you see how those four cities line up on the Tigris River? That is the big river. Euphrates is big too. It flows into the Tigris, but Tigris is the bigger river. But this was the borderline, remember, of the land that God promised to the nation of Israel in the Pentateuch. It said from the Nile River to here. So that's a big old piece of trunk. Nile River's way over here, flowing that way. So that's what God gives them. This is what they get. So they have not got all that God gave them. Much like our own life, God has given us so much more than we're willing to go get. We satisfy with so much less than God has for us, interestingly enough. So you see how this kind of fits on here. Now there's one other city, only one other city, Carchemish. It's over here by Nineveh, right in here. And that's going to become important. This is where the Assyrian Empire is defeated, destroyed, and goes away. The Battle of Carchemish in 605. I don't have it written down, something like that. Okay. 605, I think. 605 is when it goes down. They get defeated pretty strongly at 612, but then 605 at the Battle of Carchemish, they're gone. They're gone. So we see this on a map. Now, from here to here, this is out of proportion, but you get the idea. That area is called Babylonia. Or Babylon. It just takes Babylon, but there it is. This area is Assyria. Now it goes on. You'll see it on your map that I give you. It shows other nations out here. And I've got this a little bit spread out, but you get the idea. But the ones we want to know, here and here, the Hittites, that group that the Bible talks about, they never found any evidence of. They find it within the last 50 years. Huge civilization over here, the Hittites. So there's 4 nations in a row right here. These two we don't worry about. These two we do. Syria is over here. Phoenicia over here. So Phoenicia, right? You know that. And Syria. Now, in between all this is 2,000 miles of desert. The Arabian Desert, Saudi Arabia. You get Jordan over in here, but then it just goes to this huge no man's land. So you never, for Abraham to go from here to here, not a chance, man. That's 2,000 miles walking from here to New York in desert. Even to this day, you don't do that. That's just barren nothingness out there. But what you did do is you followed the rivers. Because along the rivers is where you planted things. So this right here, let's see, let's do it in green, I guess. This see, it's like a crescent moon. It's where things grew. It's called the Fertile Crescent. That's the Fertile Crescent. That's that main trade route. And all of this area here, this is Babylon, this is Assyria. If you're teaching someone about America, they're going to get all messed up because you can say, this is Mexico, that's a nation. This is New Mexico, that's part of another nation. And this is Texas, and this is Colorado. And I'm going to go like, so I'm going to do that to you now. Because that's the Fertile Crescent, right? This whole area was referred to as Mesopotamia. So you read in the Bible, Mesopotamia, that includes Babylon, Assyria, Syria, the Fertile Crescent. That's Mesopotamia. It even goes all the way out into Persia, modern-day Iran. So it's just a big old area, Mesopotamia. Okay? You see how that works? So if you're teaching somebody, say, that whole thing is called the United States. But that's New Mexico. That's part of the United States. And that's Texas. That's part of the United States. That's Mexico. That's one other country. That's not part of the United States. And they go, what? That's Mesopotamia. This is Mesopotamia over here. This area right here is called the Levant. Israel's part of the Levant. Jordan's part of the Levant. Part of Syria is part of the Levant. Part of it. Phoenicia. You ever heard of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria? ISIS. You ever hear of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant? ISIL. That's what that stands for. That's why it was so controversial amongst Christians when President Obama would refer to ISIL, because that included Palestine or Israel. And that was the issue with the Christians. It's ISIS, not ISIL. Because when you say ISIL, it's not just Syria. It includes part of Jordan and all of Israel. So that's the difference between ISIS and ISIL. Now you know the background to it. That's called the Levant, this area. Israel's part of the Levant. Okay? Make sense, kind of? Yeah. Don't erase it. Okay, so this is the map for next week. Come on, you guys, it's pretty cool stuff.
It's really cool stuff.
It's pretty stinking cool stuff, guys. Come on. You guys have that look like, oh, there's no way. Remember we did the tribes of Israel? You're going like, oh, there's no way. And now it's like, I'm sitting there telling you. Guys, in your mind, picture Zebulun and Naphtali. Go, yeah, we got that. We got that. Makes my heart just leap. It's like, oh, man, this is so cool. This is great. Now, I got two maps. This first map we're going to just cover for a second. I want to make sure I go through it with you, because you can see other bodies of water on here that you might want to know that I didn't put on the board. How cool is this, Klesson? Come on. Stinking cool. I get fired up on this. Who's right here? Rachel Monica. We can stop the video. I don't know how I ran out, but I did. Oh, that's why I gave you, oh, you have two. Okay, I'll give it back. I'll give it back. I'll give it back to you.